And Jimmy has gotten good at, if he has warning, he mutes it. So I think maybe you guys didn't have to hear that. I don't know. Did you on Zoom hear that recording? Oh, you did. Okay. We didn't have to hear it here in the sanctuary. Oops. I forgot part of the offertory. This congregation is a community of ourselves. Its energy and resources are our energy and resources. Its wealth is what we share. As we contribute to its life, we affirm our lives within it.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.
So Adrian today mentioned the 7 principles, and what we're talking about this week is the theme for this month is renewing faith. And so last week I talked about renewing faith, and today I'm talking about renewing relationship. And then I believe next week it's renewing self, and then the following week is renewing community. And so when I was thinking about what it means to be renewing relationship, I was thinking about our 7 principles and the inherent worth and dignity of all people, acknowledging the inherent worth and dignity of all people. And that's one of my favorite principles. And a lot of people really love that principle. And ironically, this sometimes when people come and talk to me about our 7 principles is the principle that people have the most trouble with too. Because I think that it's easy for me to focus on the word inherent, right? And when I think of inherent worth and dignity, I think of children. And so I don't think any of us would ever look at a group of newborn babies in a hospital and say that they don't every single one of them have inherent worth. And our instinct when we see children, when we see a child run in front of a speeding car, is to jump in and grab her, to protect her. It's instinct on a deep level. There's an inner knowing beyond words. We acknowledge the worth in that child's life, and we just instinctively jump in to protect that child. So when people tell me that they're struggling with that first principle, I don't think it's the inherent part of the principle, but I wonder if the struggle is more about the implications we ourselves make when we hear the last part of that phrase, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And I think sometimes as we get older, we become adults, we've lived a little bit, that maybe the issue is with the every person part, because we can all think of certain people in our lives who we are not very happy with sometimes. I don't think most of us are happy with everybody all the time. And so we know what to do with babies and children. We have no problem acknowledging their beauty and their inherent worth. And sometimes if you're a parent or working with young children, sometimes you may feel like you want to just kind of go a little crazy with them. But we would still jump in front of a speeding car for them. So I wonder if the struggle with this principle comes from somewhere or something else. And I wonder if part of the problem is with the premise that many of us begin with, as opposed to the principle itself. I think perhaps we can tend to fall into a logical fallacy that says, if we acknowledge the inherent worth and dignity of all people, then we somehow have to turn a blind eye to all types of really abhorrent behavior. Because we don't want to excuse bad behavior, we create a sense of cognitive dissonance within ourselves, and it goes something like this. If I acknowledge his inherent worth, that means I have to forgive him, and I don't want to forgive him because I'm still angry at him. And now I'm a bad person for not wanting to forgive him, and I shouldn't be angry at him. So I'll pretend that I'm not angry and I will forgive. And then I will spend the rest of my days feeling resentful because I never really felt like he deserved to be forgiven in the first place. And all I've done is repress my own true feelings even deeper. And now I'm feeling angry, resentful, sad, ashamed, and downright tired, all because I have conflated the idea that acknowledging this jerk's inherent worth means I have to ignore all of his bad behavior. I'm not sure if anybody's ever done that. And then they come to their minister and say, I don't like that principle. So how exhausting, right? And I don't know, but I don't think that's really all that effective. So basically what we have done is decide that acknowledging inherent worth equals unconditional acceptance, equals not making value judgments, equals I can't ask for accountability, equals I need to accept their behavior, equals I have to submerge my own inherent worth, equals I can't express my truth, equals I need to be silent, which results in feeling extremely powerless. And then we wonder why people have a problem with the concept of inherent worth and dignity for every person. And so it would be interesting to take a poll of psychotherapists, psychologists, and counselors to ask them if, in general, they believe that repressing our feelings and trying to fool ourselves into not feeling them has ever proved an effective method of therapy. My guess is probably not. And so I wonder if perhaps the issue is not acknowledging the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Maybe for some of us who are struggling with that is that the real issue is in our understanding of forgiveness. Maybe where we get tripped up is our understanding of what it means to actually forgive somebody. Forgiveness is an ideal that may have become paralyzing for some of us because we don't always understand what it means to forgive. I think many of us in this culture understand forgiveness to mean exonerating somebody who has wronged us and somehow convincing ourselves that what they did is okay. Somehow that is supposed to make us feel better. But my understanding of forgiveness is a little bit different. The Hebrew word for forgiveness means to release or let go. And so if we think of it in a little bit of a different way, if we think of forgiveness as the letting go of the energy around a person or an event. So it's not pretending that the event that happened or that the behavior that was displayed was okay. It's letting go of our energy and our attachment to that event or behavior. And so I'm going to ask perhaps a heretical question, but Adrian said it was okay. for me to ask questions up here. Is it possible that in order to truly be able to recognize the inherent worth in another person, we may have to be willing to give ourselves permission to not forgive them in the traditional sense? So I'm just going to let you sit with that, and then we'll wait for the headlines that come out that say Unitarian minister just told her congregation not to forgive. Am I telling you not to forgive? Well, yes, with a qualifier. I think we need to rethink our understanding of what it means to forgive and how we go about moving forward towards forgiveness. So if we think that forgiveness simply means turning the other cheek and letting somebody abuse you over and over again, I'm going to say, no, don't forgive, because that's not truly forgiveness. And we can look to Jesus as a role model for acknowledging other people's inherent worth. He did that with every human being he interacted with. But he did not become a doormat as a result. He was able to acknowledge the inherent worth and dignity of every person and still hold on to his righteous anger. While he was turning over the tables in the synagogue, did he say, oh, these people have inherent worth, I can't speak my truth? No, he was willing to speak his truth, stand his ground, and call out bad behavior. And he still held everybody with inherent worth and dignity. Jesus was willing to speak his truth. He was willing to stand in his truth and take the consequences, but he did not excuse other people's behavior. He did not let himself be abused or become a doormat. He was willing to die for a higher principle, but he never excused or justified other people's bad behavior. And he was willing to bring the powerful down and lift the powerless up. The woman at the well was already down. I see you, he said. I acknowledge you, and you are better than that. Go be better. And then he would walk away and he would release them. And people were inspired to be better. And so if we adopt the Hebrew understanding of forgiveness and look at what it means to release or let go of painful energy, then I will absolutely say there is value in forgiveness. So how do we forgive? Ultimately, I believe that the only way to forgive is to be willing to be truly authentic and take the time and do the work required to be real with both ourselves and the people whom we're struggling with. And so how do we get real? I've come up with five steps. First thing is, and I say this a lot, my congregation who have been here for a while are probably very familiar with this phrase, but we need to realize that the issue is never really the issue. And that means that what somebody may be expressing on an external way, they may be dealing with something much deeper underneath. And one example that I like to give is when I was working in a retirement home in Rhode Island as a chaplain there. I remember one day one of the men that was in the assisted living got extremely angry at the activity director for changing the seating chart for bingo. And you don't mess with bingo. And he came in to talk to me about it. And after we talked about bingo for about 10 minutes, and he was getting ready to leave, and he kind of said he felt better, I call this the doorknob conversation. As he's like leaving and like putting his hand on the doorknob. He says, oh, and by the way, now I have to go to the eye doctor and in about 2 hours, and I think they're going to take away my driver's license. It wasn't about bingo. His behavior was about grief and loss and the fear of losing even more of his independence. Having his license allowed him to visit his wife of 50 years, who was across town in the Alzheimer's ward. This wasn't about bingo. And so when we are struggling with somebody, I invite you to just take a pause and ask yourself, is this really the issue? Or maybe the issue isn't really the issue. And if we are willing to go a little bit deeper, so what we do is we can have this external circumstance. And if we address the external circumstance, we're not addressing the issue underneath the issue. But if we take the time to figure out what the issue underneath the issue is and we address that issue, then the external circumstance will go away. So in this example, the external circumstance would have been the bingo seating chart. We could have changed the bingo seating chart every day and it wouldn't have fixed it, because the real issue was the fear of not having the power to go be with his wife. So we address what happens if you do lose your license. What is our plan to make sure that you can still visit her anytime you want to? We address how he gets support to still feel independent enough to be with the woman he loves. And you know what? The next time he went to bingo, he didn't care where he sat, because the issue is never the issue. So the second thing we need to do is ask ourselves, is this tension about the other person, or is it about what's going on inside of me? And sometimes when we're feeling really angry at somebody else, sometimes it might just be misdirected anger at ourselves that we're not even aware of. And a few years ago, when the kids were much younger and still actually came to church with me, we were driving to church one morning and we were halfway there, and I looked back and realized that neither one of my children had shoes on. And I just lost it. And I have a sermon to preach and you're showing I'm the minister, I'm showing up with my kids and they don't even have shoes on, right? And it's interesting how children can push buttons in ways that nobody else can. And so really after my ranting, it came down to the fact that I was actually somewhat frustrated with myself about feeling as a mom so disorganized. And so it was no wonder that my children simply did nothing more than live out a physical manifestation of my own internal chaos, because it wasn't about them, it was about me. And of course, later on, I apologized, and Nathaniel, in his very pragmatic, happy child way, he said, "It's okay, mommy, you yell at us every Sunday morning." So I mean, nothing like children to just be honest, and he wasn't even worried about it. He was just but it was a pattern I had in myself. I didn't even realize until it was just pointed out. But it really wasn't, I wasn't angry at my kids for not having their shoes on. I was more frustrated with myself for feeling like I just didn't have my whole life under control. And so sometimes we do that. So that's the second thing. If you feel like you're really kind of projecting your frustration and your anger onto somebody, is it possible that there's some part of your own life that is just a little bit out of balance? And then the third thing that we need to do that might help with this is that sometimes we need to acknowledge that in certain circumstances, perhaps we're just not the right people to be acknowledging some specific person's inherent worth and dignity. It doesn't mean that this person doesn't have it. It may just mean that we're not in the place to be the people to be expressing it. And the example that I'll give of this is, for example, if somebody is attempting to get out of an abusive relationship, you don't want to tell the person trying to get out of an abusive relationship that they just need to turn the other cheek and forgive their abuser. That's not in any way helpful, right? That person needs to be finding their own sense of inherent worth and dignity and advocating for themselves. And that said, that does not invalidate that this other person in the scenario may be expressing behavior based on their own internal struggles, their own problems, and they also need a safe place to work on their issues, to understand how they have come to do the types of behavior they had, and have somebody who's willing to also walk alongside them as they move through their own struggles with inherent worth and dignity. But it is not the person they're abusing that needs to do that. And so if you find yourself in some way in a struggle with somebody else and you just can't seem to get to the point of, I just can't get there with that person, you know what? Maybe that's okay. And maybe you are just not the person to be there doing that for that person in this point of time. There will be other people that can do that. And the example I like to give is Cameron sometimes has some struggle with interacting with his mom. And the people that have the bandwidth to show the compassion are my parents. They're on Zoom right now, so, they're probably seeing me, but they are far enough removed from Cameron's mother that they're the ones that are able to show up and be there with her and give her the inherent worth and dignity that she needs. While that point in time when Cameron, as the son who was dealing with his own stuff in relation to his mother, had to step back. It's not that she doesn't need the inherent worth and dignity. It's that certain people can give it in a way that other people sometimes can't. And so I'm sure that all of us can put ourselves in both scenarios, right? There are people that I have, I'm very patient with, and it triggers other people in my life. I can be there for this person. This other person can't. And then there are people that I say, I can't be there with this person right now, but somebody else can step in and be that supportive presence, right? And so that's part of the lean on me that we sang about earlier today too, is that we can't be there for everybody all the time. And that is okay to acknowledge. And that's why then we have other people in our lives that can say, yep, you can't be there for that person. I'll step in this capacity. So just a little bit of gentleness with ourselves. We can't be there for everybody all the time. And then finally, what I want to say is that sometimes authentic anger is actually needed to be expressed before forgiveness may be granted. And what I mean by that is if we are still dealing with our own wounding, our own hurt, our own anger in regards to a situation, if we're pretending that we're not feeling wounded or hurt or angry, and we jump into forgiveness before we've actually moved through those emotions, it's not going to work. And so sometimes it's okay to take a little bit of space and say, you know what? I value you. I love you. We're going to get to the other side of this. And right now, I can't be the one to do that because I am working through my own process. When I have worked through my own process, then I can jump back in and be in a relationship. So it's okay to allow ourselves to take a little bit of time to do the healing that we need to do in order to move back into relationship. And so I just invite us today to take a little bit of time to think about what are the relationships in your life? Where are the relationships strong and healthy? And if you have those in your life, then you value them and we are grateful for them. And if there are some relationships that have been a little bit wounded or fractured, that's okay too. And we can think about what are some of the steps that we might need to do for ourselves and with each other to begin to renew those relationships just a little bit. And this is an ongoing process. It doesn't happen overnight. And so if you are finding yourself struggling with some of this, I just always want to remind you that part of my job as your minister is that I can help walk alongside you and help you think through some of these things. So if you ever feel like you need someone just to talk to, that's a big part of my job. And my door is always open. So just shoot me an email or give me a call and we'll find the time to talk more about some of this stuff. And with that, I'm going to just let us reflect on this a moment. And we're going to close out today with one of my favorite hymns, We Laugh, We Cry. And as we listen to this song today, and I invite you to take in the words, because what the invitation to this beautiful song is that we get to be part of all of it, that being fully authentically human is laughing and crying and everything in between. So let us just move into this reflective music this morning. We laugh, we cry.